Summertime should feel easy. Long nights, new friends, reckless choices. But a stranger's smile hides intent. A roommate creeps at night. A jogger turns into a stalker. And a boat party ends with shadows in the water. These are the moments that twist summer memories into one question. Who's been watching you? Summertime stranger. Derek once met this dude named Matt when he was out with friends at a bar one summer. He was out with a big group, and Matt and he made friends at the bar vibing over the Cubs game that was on. Derek's group kind of dispersed away from him as he spoke with Matt, so it wasn't like Matt really spoke to any of Derek's friends. They ended up exchanging Instagrams, and Matt had a decent amount of followers on Instagram, and his pictures made him seem like a normal 20-something-year-old dude who liked to go out, travel, and stay active. After they exchanged info, Derek went to go find his group. Honestly, whenever a guy broed out with another guy while at a bar, the odds of ever actually contacting each other again after exchanging info were slim to none. You always acted like you'd hit them up, but come the next day when sober, there was just no interest. Well, the next day, which was a Saturday, Derek went out to another bar/restaurant with his friends. This was an outdoor spot on the water. It was for his friend Tyler's birthday. Derek put something on his Instagram story as they all sang at the bar for him. After about an hour, they were done with dinner and just hanging around the outside section of the bar, when Derek got a tap on his shoulder. He turned around and it was Matt. Matt dabbed him up with a smile and said this was his favorite Saturday night spot. Derek introduced Matt more officially to his friends this time, saying, "You guys remember Matt?" Even if they hadn't really spoken to him, they did see him the night before. As the night went on, Matt kind of hung around for a while. And it was fine, because everyone was drunk, including him, and everyone was just having a good time. The next time Derek saw Matt was when Matt invited him golfing on a hot day. Honestly, Derek sucked at golfing, but it was something he wanted to get better at. So when Matt invited him early one Sunday morning, he went. He thought it was literally the following weekend after he had seen Matt last. It was just the two of them going. Derek tried to get a couple of his friends to go, but they were too hungover and said it was too early. Matt and Derek just vibed playing golf. He thought it was only 9 holes. It took them like 2 hours. Afterwards, they got food, and then Derek went home to relax before work the next day. He saw Matt one more time out after that, before Matt invited him on a hiking trip with him to Arizona. Honestly, Arizona and the Grand Canyon were always on Derek's bucket list. He checked the dates with work and confirmed he was able to go first, and he was an immediate yes. He asked Tyler and a couple of other friends to come with, but they were heavy no's. They said they couldn't get the time off work and needed to save money. The typical responses from any of Derek's friends when he tried to get them on a trip. Derek asked Matt if any of his boys were going, and Matt said, nah, he was going solo dolo. Derek actually hadn't met any of Matt's friends yet. Matt's Instagram painted him as this super popular guy though, so Derek didn't find it weird. They flew out on August 15th, and their return flights to Chicago were August 18th. They landed at night. Matt rented a car for the weekend, and on the way to the Airbnb, they stopped for food and alcohol. By the time they got to the Airbnb, it was late. They had a couple of beers when they got there, and Derek could tell that Matt was down to stay up longer. But Derek was admittedly shot and wanted to go to sleep. This was when he realized there was only one bed in the Airbnb. Derek had never asked him to confirm that there were 2 bedrooms. When he brought it up, Matt pointed to the couch Derek was sitting on and said it was a pull-out couch. He then said to relax and that he wasn't going to charge Derek for the Airbnb. Honestly, a free stay in Arizona, Derek couldn't complain about the couch. He pulled out the sofa bed, set up the sheets, and went to sleep. It was surprisingly comfortable. In the middle of the night, Derek woke up to Matt walking through the living room to the kitchen to get water. He was a light sleeper. The sound of a pin drop would make him wake up. He rolled over and went back to sleep. The next morning, Matt woke him up early. It was a sunny, gorgeous day, and they drove straight to the Grand Canyon. Derek had no idea just how massive it truly was, or how many individual trail options there were. They hiked the Bright Angel, Derek thought. He didn't realize how out of shape he was until that day. Matt was perfectly fine, laughing and telling Derek to keep up while he was dripping and sweating out of breath. They took numerous breaks, which they used to take a million amazing pictures. It was beautiful. Eventually, they got back to the car. They had been hiking for over 2 or 3 hours, and Derek needed food. They stopped by a deli on the way back. It was a long drive back to Phoenix, and when they got there, they took a midday nap, and then after that, they explored around Phoenix, and of course, in Matt fashion, they drank at multiple bars. Derek barely knew the guy, but he could already see Matt liked his alcohol. Fast forward, they got really drunk, but Derek thought he got drunker, and he wasn't sure how, because Matt was down in as many drinks as he was. They had to leave the rental on the street and Uber back to the Airbnb. It was late. Time flew by somehow. Derek didn't remember much besides Matt blasting music in the Airbnb for a bit, and Derek plugging his phone in next to the couch. He guessed he just went to sleep after that. That night, he woke up randomly, probably a couple of hours after he had fallen asleep. His bladder was about to explode, and his mouth was drier than the Grand Canyon. Derek got off the couch and headed toward the bathroom, but he heard something a crack in the floor like a crack from pressure. He scanned the dark room with his eyes and saw nothing, so he went to the bathroom. While he was in there midstream, he heard a door clicking shut. It had to be Matt's bedroom door. When he finished peeing, he went to try Matt's door, but it was locked. He knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Whatever, he went back to the couch and fell back asleep pretty easily. The next morning, he woke up at around 8, head throbbing. The first thing he noticed was his phone. It was in a weird position. He had it charging the night before and left it lying on the floor next to the couch bed, but now it was sitting on the table next to the couch and it was unplugged. He questioned why he might have done that, but ultimately his answer was simple. He had been super drunk. That day, they obviously didn't do any hiking, otherwise he would have puked. They just Ubered to the car and then did some driving around, exploring different neighborhoods, scenery, and checking out the botanical gardens. He didn't really want to drink that day, but later on, Matt convinced him. And wouldn't you know it, it was another night of getting really drunk. Their flight was at about 1 p.m. the following day, so at least they didn't have to worry about getting up really early. They got back to the Airbnb late again, he'd say between 1 and 2 a.m. this time. Matt insisted on letting Derek sleep in the bed that night, just because it was fair. Honestly, Derek didn't argue. He eventually took his bag to Matt's room and then said goodnight and shut the door. He didn't lock it. Not that it mattered, because the locks, from what he remembered, had those doorknobs with locks you could easily undo with something like a butter knife. Derek wished he could say the story ended there and that they went home in peace the next day. Well, he woke up that night, probably not long after he'd fallen asleep. He didn't know what woke him. At first, it was like waking up to a sound, but you didn't fully consciously hear that sound because you were still technically asleep when it caused you to wake up. He looked around the room, and then for his phone. His phone was missing. He had it plugged in next to the bed and had the phone on the bed next to him, but now the cord was just dangling from the outlet to the ground with no phone. How could this happen again? He looked on one side of the bed on the floor and then the other, and he jumped up and screamed at the top of his lungs when he saw Matt laying face down sprawled out on that side of the bed on the floor. Matt looked up, like he'd just woken from a deep sleep. Derek shouted, "What are you doing?" Matt looked around the room acting confused, like he didn't know how he got there. Matt stood up and said that he must have been so blacked out that he had just walked in there to go to bed, but then remembered Derek was in the bed and he crashed on the floor. That didn't make sense to Derek because Matt was on the side of the bed further from the door. Derek accused him of taking his phone, and Matt played dumb. He told Derek to check under the bed, maybe it had fallen. Then Matt got on his knees, looked under the bed, and instantly said, "Bro, here it is." And he pulled it out from under the bed. Derek looked at him, and he genuinely felt like he was staring at a different person now. Who was this guy? Had he really tried getting into Derek's phone twice? Derek told him he'd just go back to the couch, but Matt insisted he would, and then he left the room. You better believe Derek locked the door this time. If it weren't for the phone, sure, he'd just see it as Matt being really drunk and doing something goofy like passing out on the floor. But Derek detected bullshit there. Matt had taken his phone, and Derek knew it. Since he was still kind of drunk, Derek didn't really have much trouble falling back asleep. Once again, he wished it had ended there, but it didn't. He woke up one more time that night, and this time, He quickly realized why. At the foot of his bed was Matt standing there, but all Derek could really make out was his silhouette. For some reason, Derek didn't jump or scream this time. Matt sat down on the bed and started rubbing Derek's foot, and that's when Derek screamed at him to get out. Matt wouldn't move, so Derek had to physically push him off the bed and out the bedroom door. He started packing his clothes into his bag, and then quickly packed all his toiletries and whatever else he'd brought. Matt didn't say a word. He sat upright on the couch watching Derek like a creepy NPC the entire time. It was the most unsettling part. Derek called an Uber to the airport. He wasn't staying there another minute. Matt didn't try to stop him. Derek got to the airport just as the sun was starting to rise, and as hard as he tried to sleep, he couldn't. His mind was racing. He waited there the entire time for the flight. He paid about $35 to change his seat so he wouldn't be next to Matt. He stared out the window the entire time the plane was boarding so he wouldn't have to make eye contact with him. He didn't tell any of his friends until later that day. He just needed time to process and digest everything. A couple of his friends said, "See, I told you he was weird," and pointed out that both times they ran into Matt, he had been alone. That got Derek thinking that the only reason Matt had shown up at the outdoor bar was because he saw Derek's Instagram story and probably came their actual stalker behavior. Derek blocked Matt's number and Instagram, but before doing so, he went to one of Matt's older Instagram posts where Matt was with friends. No one was tagged in the picture, but Derek looked at the comments, and there was one comment from a guy who looked like he was in the picture. Derek saw that Matt wasn't even following him, or vice versa. He took it upon himself to DM the guy, asking if he was still friends with Matt. The guy responded back within 10 minutes saying, "Nah, guy's a freak, run away." From there, he told Derek about his own experience along with the other guys who used to be friends with Matt, who had all had to cut him off. The guy untagged himself from Matt's photo, but he said he couldn't forcibly get Matt to take down the picture. He wasn't surprised at all when Derek told him what had happened in Arizona, and his response was, "Guy should be in jail." It was crazy to Derek that he had thought Matt was just a normal dude looking for a bro, but he ended up being a potentially dangerous predator. Derek still just wanted to know what Matt had been trying to access on his phone. Summertime silence. This ongoing issue started about a month ago, but first some context. Owen was 24 years old and lived with his parents. His family was not well off and never had been, and pretty much all of the money he made went into supporting the household. His relationship with his parents was not the best. They bickered quite often, and whenever he wasn't working or hanging with friends, he tended to stick to himself. He didn't want to write a hard luck story or anything like that, but he'd had it tough growing up. Fitness had always been his go-to escape. He saw it as a healthy way to get his mind off personal burdens while also providing a good excuse to leave the house. There was a park about a 10-minute drive from his house that had a workout facility with bars for pull-ups, dips, and other calisthenic exercises. During the summer months, he liked to go there to work out as nature helped calm his mind. He liked to go at nighttime because since it was a public park, it tended to get busy during the day. So one night, while his parents were arguing, he decided to slip out of the house to go work out. It was an extremely hot summer night, probably 85 degrees. He remembered breathing in the humid air as he walked from his doorstep to the beat-up white Corolla sitting in their driveway. He started the rickety engine and rolled down the windows as the warm summer breeze flowed through his hair. He arrived at the park and exited his car. He was the only car in the lot. It was probably 10 or 11 p.m. The park was completely empty at that time. The beautiful scenery mixed with the steamy air to create a soothing atmosphere, which was another reason he liked this park so much. It sat on top of a hill that overlooked the downtown area of his city, which always added pleasant and sentimental emotions to his evenings. Anyway, he started a set on the pull-up bar. He wasn't really counting the repetitions. When he worked out, he just did it till failure, then took a break and did it a couple more times. It was somewhere between his sets when he took a break to loosen up his arms. Before he got back on the bar, though, an indescribable feeling came over him, and a subconscious urge forced him to turn his head around. Standing literally a foot away from his face was a tall, beaten-looking man. He actually screamed and jumped like 5 feet back. The man let out a raunchy, boisterous laugh and apologized saying he didn't mean to scare him. His appearance and mannerisms were extremely eccentric right off the bat, like he was damn near face to face with Owen. He clearly had something wrong with him. Owen asked him why he was so close, and the man said he lived there. He explained that he saw Owen working out there all the time and asked if Owen could teach him. Owen was a very non-confrontational type of person, and especially during a time like that, he really just wanted to be left alone. He awkwardly but politely told the man he was just going to do some pull-ups and leave. He hopped back on the bar and continued his set. The man's words marinated in his mind. He sees me here all the time? Owen felt the gaze of the man's eyes burning the back of his neck, but like he said, he was very non-confrontational. While the man did make him increasingly uneasy, Owen didn't really know what to say or do about it. But then, something really weird happened. Right as he was about to finish his set, he heard the man mutter his full name. His blood instantly turned cold as he jumped off the bar and slowly backed away. He said a shaky, "What?" The man didn't respond, and instead just stared at him with a crazed, wide-eyed smile. Owen thought he might have been hearing things. That's how bizarre it was. He started to get an awful feeling in his gut, like something bad was about to happen. Without another word, he decided to quickly walk back to his car and leave. He felt that man staring at him while he retreated, and thankfully, the man didn't follow him. Before he left the park, though, he took one last look, and he saw the man hanging from the bar attempting to do a pull-up. He watched as the man grabbed the bar, tried to pull himself up, and then failed and tried again, in the exact position Owen had previously been in. He swiftly left the park without looking back. The entire ride home, he questioned himself. Did the man really say his name? Was he hallucinating? He tried to forget about it, and eventually he did. He woke up early the next day to get to work. He worked construction, and he had to wake up very early before his parents. So he was the first one to notice the unmarked envelope sitting at the front door. It was addressed to him. He picked it up and figured he'd read whatever was inside whenever he had the chance. It was another sweltering hot summer day, and he took his lunch break early to cool down. He sat in his car while eating his pre-made sandwich and decided to open the envelope. He didn't really know what to expect, but never in a million years did he think he'd find 10 printed photos of himself. They were all unknowingly taken. One was of him in his car. One was of him at work. One was of him exercising at the park. He instantly remembered that creepy man from the night before and started to feel uncontrollably nauseous. He stared in disbelief as he flipped through the rest of them. One was of his house, and the worst of all was a photo of him sleeping, taken from outside his window. He nearly choked on his food as tears rolled down his cheeks. He felt unsafe. He told his boss a serious issue popped up and he left work right away. His boss wasn't happy with him, but he didn't care. He took a picture of the photos and drove directly to the police station. He gave the police the photos and explained his encounter at the park. He described the man to them, and they said they would look into it. He told his parents about it too, and for the first time in a long time, he actually got some sympathy out of them. More things started happening though. A couple nights later at like 3 a.m., he awoke to knocks at the door. He didn't open it, assuming the worst. One day, he found a sticky note pasted to his car window with a heart drawn in Sharpie. He went back to the police to report this, and they said they would open up a stalker investigation. He hadn't heard back from them yet. He figured it was hard to build a case without having concrete evidence. This had happened about a month ago, and he'd been on high alert ever since. His parents were looking for a new home, which was already tough given their financial situation. He said he'd update if anything further happened, but until then, he would continue to sleep with one eye open. Summertime Trap. Garrett grew up in Massachusetts, and every summer since he could remember, he would spend the 3 months in a classic coastal New England town. You knew the type if you had been in that area of the country. He had a big group of friends who always did the same thing, and they would get up to all kinds of shenanigans every day after their respective jobs. Garrett was 19 years old when this happened, like most of his friends, and he had just gotten off of a dock boy job he had. So like any other night, he texted his friends to see what the plan was, and picked up his friend who would call Emerson from his job to go get alcohol, since Emerson was the one with a fake ID. They got the alcohol and went back to the small town where they lived. They decided to get on Garrett's family's boat, which he was able to take out on his own, to have some beers while waiting for everyone else to finish what they were doing. They drove around the little peninsula to a place where a lot of people anchored and hung out. There were a couple of boats anchored already, and it was about 7 p.m., but it still wasn't unusual. They found a spot between the two boats, threw the anchor down, and just chilled and drank. They were having a nice time, listening to the music from the boat to their left when the one to their right decided to leave, and then eventually the other boat's music shut off. Garrett and Emerson thought they were going to leave as well, so in their drunken state, they began to groan and yell for the music to be turned back on to keep the party going, along with a bunch of other stupid stuff like that. But it didn't happen. They were sitting on the bow and started to drink again before Emerson said, "Dude, look." Garrett turned around to look at the boat and saw 3 people standing on the edge just looking at them. His first reaction was to laugh because he was drunk, and then he turned back around, but Emerson kept staring at them. Now, admittedly, Garrett didn't have a great sense of danger. He tended to be optimistic and lighthearted about most things, but Emerson was obviously uncomfortable. Garrett told him not to worry about it. They were probably just trying to get a better look or something. But Emerson kept looking with that uncomfortable expression, which Garrett didn't understand at the time. At this point, it was pretty dark, nothing illuminating the area but the lights from their boat, and therefore, they couldn't really see who it was, just the silhouettes of these people. After a couple of minutes of trying to get Emerson to snap out of it, Garrett turned back around and saw they were still in the same position staring at them. He thought it was a joke, so he grabbed the megaphone from the compartment over the steering wheel and said, "20 to watch, fellas," which pissed Emerson off because he sensed something wasn't right. Garrett was putting it back when he heard one of them laugh. Audibly a man, but something was off about it. It sounded almost sinister. It was slow and low, kind of raspy. It was at that point Garrett started to feel uncomfortable. Emerson got up and said, "Let's get the hell out of here, bro. This ain't right," but Garrett responded that it was fine. Right after that, they heard 2 splashes in the water from the other boat's direction and saw that only one silhouette remained. That made Emerson immediately start pulling the anchor up, while Garrett laughed at the situation and at him something that in hindsight was unbelievably stupid. Emerson tried telling Garrett to turn the engine on while he struggled with the anchor, but Garrett just kept laughing and sipping his beer. In fact, he was laughing so much that he didn't notice the sound of the 2 people swimming near their boat. Emerson paused and looked at him with the anchor in his hands, which made Garrett pause too. They couldn't see into the water as it was dark, and the other boat's lights were off. Garrett called out, "Hello," and got nothing. Even the splashing stopped. Right after that, he simultaneously heard Emerson yell, "Oh shit," and a sudden splash of water behind him before he turned and saw someone trying to climb onto the back of their boat. Garrett freaked out, and while turning the key, saw a hand grab the railing on the side near Emerson, who was yelling and holding the anchor up, ready to fight. Garrett finally turned the boat on and instinctively gunned it forward, smashing into the sandbar that was right in front of them. He put it in reverse and drove backwards as fast as possible until they were out of the little bay and back into more open water. Throwing it back in neutral, Garrett and Emerson just looked at each other before Emerson started giving him the "I told you so's," and "you're a dumbass." Garrett fully agreed and said they should go back, at which Emerson agreed. In hindsight, they should have hightailed it back to the docks near Garrett's house, but for some reason, they decided to pick up everything that had been thrown around during their escape. They hadn't even finished before Garrett noticed in the direction they had just come from the lights of a boat approaching fast. He muttered, "No fucking way," jumped back to the steering wheel and pushed full throttle. Their boat was old, so it didn't go super fast, and even though Garrett was full speed ahead, the other boat was gaining on them. Emerson started to lose it, saying things like, "Who are these guys? What do they want? Why can't they just let us chill on the water?" Garrett told him to chill out and focused on steering straight to the docks. After about 5 minutes, the docks were in sight, but the boat behind them was so close they could see the bow rising and falling with the waves. Garrett honestly didn't know what to do. He banged a hard left and got as close to the shore as he could without beaching, and miraculously, the other boat peeled off in the other direction. They both breathed sighs of relief, but Garrett still went full speed back to the docks. After docking and being relieved at the fact that there wasn't any damage to the boat, they met up with their friends, told them what had happened, and came up with theories maybe the strangers wanted to rob them, or maybe they wanted to take the boat. Garrett and Emerson didn't recognize the boat, so they were probably not from around the area. Garrett didn't like to think about what could have happened. He was just glad they didn't find out. What he did know was that he was thankful for Emerson being there. Without his skepticism, Garrett thought things definitely could have taken a turn for the worse.